Hi everyone, my name is Lori, my nickname is Rini, and I'd like to welcome you to Rini Beanie Creations. If this is the first time you've popped by to check out my channel, I'd like to offer you a very warm welcome. I do hope you like what you see, and if you do, please hit that thumbs up button, consider subscribing, and sharing with your fellow crafters. If you're one of my amazing subscribers, I'm so glad you're back. You mean the world to me, and I look forward to our journey together. So today's craft is one that was it's a long time coming. I want to say a year or more ago, I made a couple of gnomes with raincoats on, and they were really cute, but I had some issues with the video editing. I had some trouble. For some reason, the sound was bad, and when I tried to run it through the program and fix it, it wasn't bad in the program, so I'm not sure what happened. And I've been promising for quite a long time to redo that video. So I finally gotten it. We're just doing the one today. We're doing the little boy. And so this is our little gnome in his raincoat. And I will do a girl version of it with the braids again. But for today, I did change them up a bit with the boots and all that kind of stuff. So I hope you stick with me. It was really fun to do. I think they're so cute when they're done. And they weren't difficult. In fact, compared to the last one, I changed things up and made them a little bit easier to work with. So stick with me and we'll get on with the crafting. Got these little baby socks. They're a little bit bigger than what I need, but it will certainly work because we can just fold them in and stiffen them up. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of mold them how they want to look. So this is just a store bag that I'm going to stuff in the toe. And shape it how I would like it to be. And then just I've got a toilet paper roll in the plastic. Now you do want to wrap your toilet paper roll in the plastic because we're going to Mod Podge it to make it stiff on the outside, and we don't want it to stick to our toilet paper roll because the next step that will not work very well. So I just wrapped it up. You can use cellophane, whatever, just something so your Mod Podge is not going to stick to the toilet paper roll. And then I just sort of shaped it until I got a size and the shape I was happy with. Now it's not going to be this tall when we're done. It's going to be considerably shorter, but we will fold it in and take care of that later. If you can find smaller socks, and if you can find them in just white, I couldn't find them. Every pair of little baby socks I found had a pattern. They were cute, but not for what I was doing. So we're going to paint these up after anyway. So for myself and the size that I would like to do, that's sort of how it works. So I've got the heel is up quite high. I don't want it to be that long. Now the reason we need to stiffen it up is because later, once it's stiff, we're going to fill it with plaster of Paris. And I tried it without doing it because it hardens fairly quick, but I couldn't get it to hold the shape with the plaster of Paris alone, just using that to stiffen it. So I did the Mod Podge method, and that seemed to work very well. Now the other thing I'm going to do is cut out a foot part. Now what I'm going to use, or what I would recommend that you use, is the craft foam board. It's a little bit thicker, but my dollar store was out of the black, which is what I wanted, so I did have something I'm going to use instead for now, but I am going to add the foam board when they get their new shipment in. And I'm just going to cut out sort of a boot, a bottom part for the boot to help it hold its shape as well. So I've got, this is just like a drawer liner for a toolbox, and it's got a little bit of substance. It's not quite as stiff as I would like, but I'm going to add 2 layers anyway. So I think when I get the black foam, craft foam, the 2 layers will make it stiff enough. So I've just sort of traced out about what I think it should be. Now I'm going to do a little bit rough cut because I'm going to put it on the foot and make sure before I finish it here. So we'll just cut it out rough. And then we'll just tuck it up to the foot here. This part is a little bit of waiting because you have to do a layer of Mod Podge, wait for it to dry, and then do another layer. So it does take a little bit of time. But if you do, do it in an evening, by the morning it's dry, you can do your second coat. So then, just to help it keep its shape, I'm just using hot glue. I'm going to glue it to the bottom of our sock. So then just with my regular old Mod Podge, now if you're doing this outside, there is outdoor Mod Podge. Mine's going to be outside, but it's going to be undercover where I'm going to put it this year. So I'm not going to use the outdoor one. I find the the smell of the outdoor one's really bad. It works well, but it's nicer if you can work it outside. So being very generous with your Mod Podge, because you really want this to stiffen up so it will hold the shape when we put the plaster of Paris in. You're going to do at least 2 coats and just make sure you've got decent coverage. Okay, so I got decent coverage on there. And then I just put it in a measuring cup to help it hold its shape while it dried. And you're just going to let that sit until it's good and dry, and you'll do your second coat. And then when they're both done and the boot is quite stiff, we'll come back and we can do the plaster of Paris part, and we're going to put some dowel in there to give him some legs. So we'll come to that as soon as we've got our couple of coats on and he's good and stiff. So here's our little sock with its 2 coats of Mod Podge on it, so it's quite stiff. So we're going to take out the packing stuff here now. Okay. So now we're going to fill them with plaster of Paris, and you're going to need a dowel, and you can decide how tall you want your dowel to be. It is possible to cut them down after if necessary, but it's certainly easier to do at the beginning. I usually have to adjust them a little bit anyway once I get the 2 together, but we're going to start by filling them up with plaster of Paris. So if you get plaster of Paris, they carry it at Michael's, you can get it on Amazon. The ratio is 1.5 parts of plaster to 1 part water. Now I've been using plaster of Paris for quite a bit, and depending what I'm doing, I may adjust that a little bit, but I'm kind of know the consistency now. But if this is your first time using it, just follow that 1.5 plaster to 1 water. The other thing I tend to do too is, because you don't always get a perfect measurement for your job, so I always pull out one of my silicone molds or something, and then if I have some leftovers, I can make a pour for a future project. So it's just a little tip on the side here for that. So I poured in my plaster. I'm going to add the water. Now I like to add it a little bit slowly so I don't get lumps. Although it's pretty good about not lumping up, but I still just and just keep stirring, and you can always add a bit more of either the water or the plaster. So but once I get it to the right consistency, I'll try and show you what that looks like so you can when it's like this, it looks too watery, but you can still see there's some lumps in there. As those dissolve, it will start to thicken. And plaster of Paris really doesn't take, for what you're doing, very long to dry. They say, and I mean, it depends how thick and everything is, but an average mold, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to dry. With our boots, it will probably take, I would give it a couple of hours for sure, but it does set up pretty quickly. So I don't know if you can see, that's sort of the consistency that you're looking for. And then I'm just going to keep stirring just a bit to make sure I got it all out of the corners and that sort of thing. All right. And then I'm just going to, just because I have this on hand, I'm just going to set it in there so if I make spills, it's just a bit easier to clean up. Just going to pour it in my boot, and I'll probably, and just sort of let it settle for a minute, reshape them just a bit. Yep, I think I'll need just a bit more. Now, some of the water will seep out of your boot. It's going to happen. It's fine, especially along the bottom where we just put the base to hold it. And we didn't Mod Podge the bottom, but it's okay. It will still work. Don't worry if some of it's seeping out a little bit. Put them next to each other to make sure I'm getting about the right height. And I do think I am going to use a little bit more Mod Podge. Or, sorry, plaster. That's probably about where we want it here. So now I'm just going to take my stick here and tuck it into the middle, just like that, and let it sit. And they're fairly even, that should be okay. Get them as close as you can. Hopefully they're perfect, that rarely happens, but that should be good. And we're going to set that aside to dry. So this is the boot all hardened, the one that I did previously. So I'll just go on to the next step while the other one's drying here. So just like my previous video, if you've seen it, it did really well. Everybody liked it except for I had issues with the sound. So I am going to use the same stuff. I was really happy with it, thought it was super cute. So this is going to be our guy's coat and hat. So I just wanted to find a color that would go well with it. Well, I don't think you get much better than that. But I'm going to tell you a trick before we start painting him yellow. When you're using a yellow paint, I don't know what it is about the pigment, but you would need a billion coats to cover this. So when I have to paint yellow over something that's not, I mean, if you found white socks and they're plain white, you could just go ahead and paint it. But if you're like me and you had to take something with some color on it, you're going to want to give it a couple of coats of white paint to cover the color first before you do your yellow, or you will be doing it forever. So I'm just going to use plain old acrylic paint, and this is just the one I got from the dollar store, and I'm going to give it at least 2 coats of the white. We'll just see how good our coverage is before I move on to doing our yellow. So our boot is all dry, the plaster of Paris is dry, it's got a couple of coats of the white, and now we're going to give it a couple of coats of the yellow that matches our coats and stuff. So I'm probably going to need at least 2 coats on here, I would expect. Right, so our little gum boots are all painted up now. So we're going to start to make the bottom part here with the black. So I did finally go get some foam board from the dollar store. I think there was 6 in a pack, 3 different colors, and they cost me $1.50, so not much. And I actually like that it's got that bit of a pattern because I think it looks like the bottom of a boot pattern. So what we're going to do, if you'll remember when we did the original bit on the bottom here, I just sort of traced around it and cut out something like this. So I just took this one and just went marginally bigger. So if you've been watching my channel, you know if I have to trace something on black, this is the sliver of soap that I like to use because it shows up and it's easy to get rid of. And it has a nice sharp edge. All right, so we're just gonna cut those out. Okay, so I'm going to put the pattern sign down. If you didn't find some with the pattern, that's just fine. Just use whatever you have. And I'm going to glue it. Now you can see it's a little bit bigger, but that's okay because what we're going to do, we will cut a skinny little piece. I'm just going to go around and push it so it's sort of up, but then you'll see how we're going to finish those edges a bit here. Okay, so the bottom of our boots are all done, the bottom part of them, but the next thing we're going to do is give it an edge to clean it up and make it look just a little bit more like a gum boot. So to do that, I've got my foam board. I'm going to take a ruler. I want it quite thin, just a thin strip. And with my cutting tool, I'm just going to run it down the length. Now I'm thinking I will probably need a couple to go all the way around, but we'll see here how we do. We're going to start to glue it around the outside of our boot. Now I'm going to start in the middle at the front because that's what you're going to see the most of. And so just with our glue gun again, I'm just going to run a bead. I'm going to put the best side up and the raggedier side down, if that makes sense, if you don't have a perfect cut. I'm just going to work my way around the boot. So there's our little boots, and just for one last finishing touch, I'm going to do the loops on the side. So I've just got this cord. You could probably use the strip of the foam again. I just found this cord was a little bit easier to work with. So I'm just going to decide about how long I want my loops. So there they are with their little loops on them. Now the next step is starting to put our body on. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky, I'm thinking. We'll find out. So I'm going to put the boots exactly how I want them to look. And then I've got this round. They came in a pack of 3. They're from the dollar store, Dollarama in my case, but I know you can get them at pretty much every kind of dollar store there is. And we're going to set them on top. But before we do that, we need to put our sock. So again, just Dollarama socks. I was a little bit wondering if this would fit, but it did. So you're just going to put it so the toe is sort of in the middle. Just keep working with it till you get it reasonably flat. So once we've got our little sock on, I've had to play with this a bit to find a way to make it work. It didn't work my original plan. So I'm going to take this was a jumbo popsicle stick. I just trimmed off the ends so that it wouldn't stick out past the round sock. And this is just going to give it something a little more stable to sit on so it stays put. Now we're not going to fill it too heavy with this particular one. So we don't need it to be, you know, super heavy duty, but we do need something for it to adhere to. So I'm just going to set that on there. And I'm going to let it get good and dry before we go on to the next step. So I'm just going to let that dry. I'm personally going to let it dry overnight because it's... So our sticks are on there now. We're going to go back with our wood glue. And I'm going to be pretty generous with this glue on this part. And then I'm just going to sit it on top. And I'm going to let that get good and dry too. And just to make sure it stays down, I'm going to use these clothes pegs just to keep everything tight and kind of where I want it to be. And then once that's good and dry on there, we'll come back and we'll start putting our cute little guy together. The boots and the top are all on now. So for this one, I'm going to use fluff to fill them. So you can use, the reason I don't want to use rice on this one is because it's going to be heavy and I don't want it to come apart from the legs. So I'm just going to stuff him with the fluff. Alright, so that's what you should be left with. Now, I know he seems like he's a funny shape and I'm going to push this fluff around a bit, but it's not really going to matter when we get his little rain jacket on. So I am going to play with it just a bit, just to make it more even. There we go, and then just like our other ones, we're just going to use an elastic to tie him off at the top. So then we'll come back and do the next step. So now our little guy is all tied off, little boots on. And this set, need to measure him. Now I've already done this. Mine is 16 inches around. And I'm going to go, I want it to go down just about to his boots. So I'm going to go 7 inches down. So we need a 16 by 7. So I'll set him aside. Now, if you're one of the ones that saw my other video where I did the two little gnomes in the raincoats, this is exactly the same fabric. It's just from the Dollarama. It's a summer tablecloth. It was in the seasonal section. They come in red and green as well. Maybe even other colors, but that's all I saw. So because I've got this nice edge that's already finished, I'm going to make that my bottom edge, and I'm going to measure the 7 inches from there. Then I don't have to do a finish. Now, if you don't, you can always just add an inch, a half an inch, something like that, to fold it under and clean up the edge. And it's really even not all that necessary. This is not going to fray, so you could just leave the edge raw even. But because I've got this this edge that's all done up for me, I'm gonna make use of it. So let me see if I can move my camera a bit. So to our measurement, we are going to add 2 inches on the width, on the length, and 1 inch on the width. So we are going to cut out, instead of a 7 by 16, we're going to do an 8 by an 18 because we want to allow for lapels and a collar. All right, so that's our little yellow piece. Let me trim up my edge. So the edge with the stitching will be our bottom. So the next thing we want to do is clean up the edges a bit. So I'm just going to fold them in. And then with a bit of hot glue, I'm just going to put a bead. And just fold it in and give us a nicer edge. Kind of melting the plastic on it. All right, so now coming back to our little guy. So we're gonna wrap it around, but now you can see he's all bulky at the top. That's okay, because what we're gonna do next is we're gonna fold this down. I'm just trying to see how deep I need them. Okay, I think that's going to work just fine. So I'm just going to tack it down all the way along here as well. Now I know it seems like quite wide, and you can see my cut is not as even as I thought, but it'll be fine. And then we want to do it again, but we want to tack it this way. And that's going to give us a little collar. So I'm not going to put glue the whole way along. I'm just going to put beads. So then we should be left with something similar to that. So now when we wrap it around him, he has a bit of a collar. And I'm going to pull him a bit that way because I want this bit to be sort of in the middle. Now, to make it fit in the back a little bit better, so I'm going to try and do this so it can show. So we've got him, so it fits all the way around the bottom, which is what we wanted. And then we got this bit at the back. So all we're going to do is put a pucker. So we're just going to, at the top, go that way, and then we are going to go that way and just put a little tuck. I think I need to move that over a bit more. So I'm going to flip it over so you can kind of see how it should look on the outside. It's going to look like that. So you got this bit of a pucker, but that makes it tighter around the top. And it is longer on the one side because this is going to be our overlap side. So we want that space. It won't be, if you put it right in the middle, it will be off. And then just, again, with going in with the hot glue, I'm just going to tack it down. All right. So we will come back to this because we still need to do his beard and his hat. So I'm going to set that aside for the moment. Now for his hat, this is just a little applesauce dish that I rescued from the recycle bin. And the last time I made the hats, they were a little bit complicated. They were a little more labor intensive, but I'm gonna do this one a bit of an easier way. Now I'm gonna need around, I need to cut a circle out of our same fabric, and I need it to be a bit bigger than this. So knowing that this is the best way I have found to do this without having to remember my geometry class is I'll start in the middle, I'll go down, and then I'll decide about how long out I want it now. So I'm going to do 4.5 inches across, like one side, so meaning we will be cutting a circle that is 9 inches across. So we'll bring our fabric back up. There we go. I'm just going to cut a piece so it's a little bit easier to work with. So there is my template. Now I have a Cricut, so I make good use of it. And so I just measured out the 9 inches in my Cricut. Now if you don't have one, you could find a lid that's 9 inches or very, very close. You could use a protractor, whatever works for you to get your 9-inch circle. So that's what I'm going with. So then I'm just going to trace around it. So there's a little circle. So in order to give it a bit of a cleaner edge, I'm going to take my scissors and just about maybe a 1/2 inch in every so often, I'm just going to put a cut. Now it doesn't have to be so precise that you need to measure it. And so starting at one end, I'm just going to fold under my edges and tack it down with a little hot glue. So now we're going to put it over our container. Now because the container, because this is kind of melty, I'm only going to put one spot in the middle to hold it in place, because I'm going to cover it up with something on the top after. That'll hold it in place while we do the rest. So I'm just going to put a little bead of glue. We'll press it down. Give it a minute for that glue to dry. And then these are just white shoelaces. So I'm going to wrap them around the bottom. And I'm going to do it with a little bit of hot glue there as well. So I'll pick my one spot. And I'm just going to put a little bead of glue just to get us started. sort of bunch. So that's kind of what we're after. So now that I've got it sort of holding in the one place, I'm going to put another bead of glue on the outside of that same spot and start with my shoelace. Now you can use ribbon for this, you can use any kind of cording. I just felt like this was simple for the hat than just what I was going with. But yeah, you can use yellow, whatever color you want. And I'm just going to keep kind of bunching as I go and tacking it down and wrapping it. Right, so then I'm just gonna cut it down a little bit. So there's our little hat. I'm gonna put his hat on him. And then I've got it's a mop head, and I love the strings for the beards for these guys. I think they're so cute. So I'm gonna cut off, oh, I've already done some, obviously. I've used it for several. You can see it has that little attach at the top. Now if eventually you run out and you have to replace it, but because I have it still attached, I'm just going to trim everything down to that. I'm going to cut out some of this so I don't have to, so it won't peek through. But by cutting it that way, you've already got a straight line. You don't have to do every single one individually, which is a time saver. And wherever this green is, I can always hide it with an extra string or whatever if it peeks through a bit. So I'm going to decide sort of where I want him. I'm going to trim off the longer ones. So I've got this fleshy colored pom-pom, again, Dollarama items or dollar store items, and that's going to be our nose. So just to make sure from now on that everything goes on where it needs to be, we're going to put our hat on. So I am going to stand them up just to make sure. And then just putting some glue around the edges of our little rain hat. I'm going to pop them on. So he looks like this. Now we are going to put his jacket on, because everything else after that is kind of dependent on how this all goes on. So get his jacket under his hat there. Bring it around. I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. And then we'll place his nose. So I'm just going to turn this so you can see it. So we have it almost up to the hat. It'll just be shy of the hat. And we're going to put his nose on there, and then we will build the beard around him. I'm just going to pull. All right. So to help keep it in place while I mess with it, I'm going to put a bead of glue to close his jacket. There we go. And then I am just going to put a couple of beads on his jacket at the back to keep it in place. Okay, so now we can start getting him all put together. So we'll take our little nose. And now we'll take our beard. Just going to put around his nose, and then I can always add more as I get him situated. So put him there, and all this green, we will hide it. So now with some of those strips we took off, we can just start gluing them in place to hide anything we don't want to show. And all those little pieces, the little wee ones, we're going to stick up under his hat, like his hair. So don't throw those ones out either. So I got his beard pretty much how I want him. So now I'm just going to take all these little extras and tuck them up under the hat and give him sort of some hair. There's a little guy with his hair. This is his hair. I may fill it in as I go here, but the next part I'm going to do is just as I'm going around and checking him, I'm going to tack his hat down onto the beard. So we hide those edges and it kind of stays in place for us. And just as you're doing this, if you find the odd spot, the is maybe a little bit bald, you can put it in. So just to add that little extra bit of cuteness to them, I've got this little butterfly. It was in my stash, but I know it came from the dollar store, as did these little bees and the ladybugs. And I thought they would just add that little extra touch. So I'm just gonna glue those on. Now these bees and the bugs do come with their sticky adhesive things, but I never find they stick real well, so I'm going to add some hot glue to them. And there we have our cute, adorable little raincoat gnome. I may do the matching girl, we'll see. But I think he turned out really cute. He was a little bit easier than the last one that I did. Loved the way the boots turned out. Was really happy with the way our little boots turned out. Thought they were pretty cute. So I hope you liked it too. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. I would love to hear from all of you. And we will take some better pictures, and I'll see you in the next one.